we don't have anything akin to representative democracy in the United States. It's a really screwed up mess. We just put 5 people in the U.S. Senate by gubernatorial appointment. I mean, one person chose those senators. And one of those senators, the lousy pick from Colorado, a so-called Democrat, got in there and just voted against giving people mortgage bailouts. So a person who got in the Senate chosen by one governor helped to screw up taking care of 2 million people that are going to lose their homes this year. That is not democracy. And so the bottom line is, we ought to have a democracy movement in this country.
You made progressive politics what the American people wanted. You put the issues in front of them. You said we should have a single-payer health care system, and health care has to be the issue in this campaign, and that we will not abide a health care plan without a public plan. We won't do it. We can't do it. We have to say that, look, this environmental, this cap and trade bill, this energy bill that's coming up, has got to be one where the proceeds of these auctions go into environmental protection. They've got to take care of the very problem that these very credits are designed to solve. We've got to say that as we move into this issue of withdrawing from Iraq, we've got to actually withdraw from Iraq. And we cannot attempt in any form, fashion, to colonize Afghanistan. We've got to say, yes, it's good that your first day in office, you said to the Muslim world, we want a new way forward based on mutual respect and mutual interest. It's good that you sent George Mitchell to Israel, Palestine, to try to work things out. It's good that you have begun to reach out this way, but it is the progressive movement that is now Muslim, Christian, Jewish, people of no particular faith who are demanding that we have a settlement through the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and are willing to do something about it. And we are not going to back down because somebody says unkind things about us or questions our devotion to the full equality of all human beings. Because we know that we care deeply about the dignity of all people, Jewish, Muslim, Arab, Israeli, all. We care about all. I went to Gaza only about a month ago. And let me tell you what I saw there. I've been to war zones before. I've been through Ramadi and seen buildings with 12-foot holes in them. I've been through Afghanistan. This was worse than all that. What I saw there was a place that was completely isolated in every direction, land, sea, sky, everywhere. A place where they hadn't even begun rebuilding the damage from the last conflict they were in. A place where there were so many little kids who came up to us that I turned to the interpreter and said, what's the percentage of people under 18 in Gaza? One person said 50%. The other corrected the first and said, no, 60%. And then the person from the UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Works Agency, said, no, it's particularly 56%. But 48% of all Gazans are under 15 years old. What I saw is a place where if it were not for the tunnels between Egypt and Gaza, that they would not have anything in Gaza other than flour, sugar, and cooking oil. And if we do not open these insane crossings to full food and rebuilding materials, we are essentially punishing average, ordinary children for global political bargaining reasons. And the progressive movement has got to be robust, strong, and do something about it. We got to create a political space where something can be done. I believe Obama wants to do something about it, but he can't do something about it if he is being fought at every turn by people within and without the administration. Who is going to stand forward and say, yeah, you know what? $900 million for our Palestinians is a good start. That amount of money that's being proposed by the administration is imperiled and being fought. Because people are saying, well, how do we make sure none of it gets to Hamas? Well, there's ways to do that. But how do we, instead of focusing on how we keep it away from somebody, let's talk about how we get it to somebody. Let's get it to 12-year-old Ahmed, 13-year-old Safiya, 9-year-old Mahmoud, so they can grow up and give forth the world the talents that they have, so they can have other options other than desolation and despair, which is growing in their little hearts at this moment as we ignore them. What's the future of the progressive movement? Let me just get specific a little bit. We got to pass the Employer Free Choice Act. Absolutely. It's got to happen right away. We've got to make sure that the health care debate does not get hijacked and we end up with some corporate-based health care plan like that's been robbing us blind for the last 45, 50 years. That means that if you put single payer on the table, Dennis Kucinich and John Conyers have put the bill on the floor. You have got to help us create the dialogue so that the president must address it. It's not a matter of whether he's a good or bad guy. He's the best we could get. But let's create a political space in which he can be a great American president, the one who ushered in single-payer health care. Let us link the progressive movement with the Progressive Caucus, which exists in Congress right now. I am a vice chair of the Progressive Caucus. Every week, you can see me on C-SPAN with other members of the Progressive Caucus talking about the progressive message. Now, I'm about to ask a question which I need an answer to. How many of you guys have ever seen us doing this? By show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, here's my dream. My dream is that you guys will be tuning in to watch this, right? And we will have millions of people hearing the progressive message. And the progressive message will not come from members of Congress, but will come from you. You will email us in and say, Keith, we got to be talking about credit cards this week. We got to be talking about the fair distribution of the TARP money and how it really ought to be used. We need to be talking about how we increase wages for people who've seen flat wages for decades now. We got to be talking about how we can look out for workers and not have them see their legacy, their pensions robbed blind through bankruptcy as this American auto industry goes through this transformation. You tell us what we talk about, you tune in, give us feedback, and we keep on having this cycle going, an endless loop from us to you, from you to us, and back and forth again, so that we can really get this progressive message out in a strong way so that people are coming up and listening to it. Now, I want to thank you for giving me the 1 minute thing because I meant to stop at 7, and this 1 minute means I went for 9, which is a problem. But I just want to say, rejoice because Aretha Franklin sang the Star-Spangled Banner. That's right. Rejoice because Joseph Lowery gave the benediction. That's right. Rejoice because Obama gave his acceptance speech on this, for the Democratic nomination on the same day that Martin Luther King gave the I Have a Dream speech. Rejoice for all these reasons, but after you rejoice, roll up your sleeves and let's get busy again.
Well, Keith Ellison was listing his many things for which to rejoice. So I will, first off, rejoice that a kid from Union Grove, Wisconsin, could be on a panel with 5 of the great heroes of American democracy and so many other things. We Wisconsinites are often accused of being nice. We are mainly nice because we come from such small towns you can't afford to be mean to anyone. You know everyone. And so I do rejoice at that. I also rejoice, I thought Keith left one, Keith's pretty good. But I thought he left one thing out. He was rejoicing. Lowery gave the benediction, and Aretha Franklin sang her song, and Obama spoke on the King anniversary. I would just like to rejoice that the current president of the United States, unlike George Bush, gave his inaugural address in English.
You're right. I got to give you that one.
I would also like to rejoice that, too often I'm the great counter and recaller of the dead. and it goes back to La Follette. In our family, he was an icon. But I will note that those of you who are from Wisconsin or who supported Eugene McCarthy for president in 1968, or were a member of the National Women's Political Caucus, or the New Democratic Coalition, or had anything to do with the nuclear freeze movement, Midge Miller died about a week and a half ago. And Margaret Midge Miller was the Wisconsin campaign manager for Gene McCarthy. She did co-found the National Women's Political Caucus. She did write the initial nuclear freeze documents and legislation in this state and others around the country, and she was an absolute hero. And I want to tell you, if she could have held on for 2 more weeks, she would have dragged herself out of that bed and been here with us, and she was an incredible woman. But I also want to talk about the living, and I want to say that in our audience today is, there's a whole bunch of reasons why I want single-payer health care, but the #1 reason that I want single-payer health care is that so when we pass it and when we enact it, I can stand up with Linda Farley and celebrate this victory. Dr. Linda Farley, who has fought for her whole career for single-payer health care, went to Jamaica, taught them how to do their health care plan, has been all over this country and all over the world. She's a total hero. So I have 2 minutes left, but I will say I went to the inaugural, and it was a heck of an event. Lovely, lovely event. 3 million people were there. 2,999,999 came to cheer on Barack Obama. Unfortunately, I was just there to make sure Cheney left. They had to take him out in the wheelchair, but it was pretty darn good, and it was darn good for a reason that if we had a media in this country that actually covered politics and government, they might have mentioned this, that Barack Obama put his hand on the Lincoln Bible and swore an oath of allegiance to a constitution that, when written, did not imagine him as a human being. And Katha so ably talked about the accomplishments of our movement, I will tell you something. That is a remarkable thing that it did take 200 and some years, but that we would have made that transition, and that he could do it with such grace, and that also he could do it with a message for us. Buried in the speech, most of our media didn't notice it, everybody wanted to know who Barack Obama would quote in his inaugural address. Would he quote Washington or Lincoln or any of the other great founders and early presidents? They always quote somebody. And they got it all wrong. They all said that he quoted Washington, because at the end of his speech he said, as President Washington, or General Washington, ordered red in the camps during the Revolutionary War. And then he quoted this line about winter soldiers and sunshine patriots. And in fact, he was quoting Tom Paine, the one founder who objected to the Constitution because it treated African Americans as 3/5 of a human being. Come on, Tom Paine. Come on. We have the most historically literate president of the United States today. The most historically literate president since Woodrow Wilson, and probably since the founders themselves. We also have the most instinctually progressive president of the United States since John Quincy Adams, who was a really good guy. So we've got a great guy in there. There's so many reasons. I wasn't a big fan of Obama during the way I was like Katha won over to him, but the bottom line is this is a pretty remarkable thing. And if we spend all of our time griping about what a lousy job he's doing, we are going to seem, as my grandmother used to say, ungrateful. and so I will give you my notion about Obama. I could care less about him or about his presidency, because the fact of the matter is lesser presidents have given us great things. Look, the bottom line is Jefferson was a slaveholder, and he said all men are created equal. Madison was a slaveholder, and he gave us a Bill of Rights. You know, Dwight Eisenhower was a military man, and he warned us about the military-industrial complex, and Richard Nixon was a crooked thug, and he gave us environmental programs. The bottom line is that we have these weird expectations about presidents. I hope Barack Obama is a very, very good president. But I hope that we are a very, very good movement. Because if we could get Richard Nixon to give us environmental programs, then we ought to be able to get Barack Obama to give us single-payer health care, peace in the Middle East, and bailouts for Main Street, not Wall Street. And I will tell you, I'll close off with just this notion here. We are asking for so damn little. It is pathetic. It is pathetic. I'm sorry. Getting all the troops out of Iraq and getting them out of Afghanistan as well is a baseline request. It is not some big dream. It is a baseline request for a Democratic administration with a president who went to an anti-war rally in 2002. And I'm sorry, single-payer health care is a baseline request for a president of the United States who said in 2008 that if he was forming a system from the start, he would do a single-payer system. It is a baseline request. And frankly, for a community organizer who worked on the south side of Chicago, bailing out our neighborhoods and our communities, our farmers and our workers first, not our bankers and our Wall Street speculators, is a baseline request. Baseline. That's a given, as are all of the civil rights demands, including same-sex marriage that we make. That's the starting point. What we ought to be asking for, we ought to at least have the dignity of the far right. When they get near power, they start demanding constitutional amendments. Right to life, marriage amendment. You know, and I'm sorry, the progressives didn't think the Constitution was sacrosanct. They thought it was a starting point. And the bottom line is this. I want a constitutional right to health care. I want a constitutional right to education. And I'll tell you, when we demand that, it's not going to be, then they're going to give us the Pell Grants. If we go out and ask for a constitutional right to education, they'll throw us a Pell Grant without even talking about it, because we're demanding so much more. And the final right that I want to demand is the right to vote. Because, yes, the right to vote, because when they stole the presidency of the United States in 2000, when the presidency of the United States was stolen, I was in Africa. I had a Zimbabwean come up to me. He said, "Can you explain your electoral system in the U.S.?" I said to him, well, you know, blah, 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 electoral college, all that stuff. And he said, but I don't get this part. The guy who got less votes wins? And I said, yeah, it can happen. He says, well, that happens in our country too. But you cut off our foreign aid when we do that. So, but I'm not serious about this right to vote thing. I'm serious about it. When they went before the court, the lawyers for Al Gore and for, you know, saying that you ought to actually count the votes in Florida, talked about a right to vote, and Antonin Scalia, Supreme Court Justice, interrupted him and said, there is no right to vote in the U.S. Constitution. Americans do not have a right to vote or to have their vote counted. I take Antonin Scalia seriously. And I will tell you this. Congressman Jesse Jackson, Jr. heard that, and he did exactly what every member of Congress, including this good man, should do. And that is he sponsored a constitutional amendment to guarantee that every American has the right to cast a vote and to have that vote counted. And I don't want to, I'll close here, I do not, with all due respect, Obama, great, thrilled with him, but if the progressive movement cannot finish this moment of change without winning a fight for the right to vote, then damn us and forget about us. We should go in there and make fundamental demands. If we want to honor Robert M. La Follette and the Progressive magazine, to which we have 2 subscriptions, if you want to honor Robert M. La Follette and the Progressive magazine, remember what Robert M. La Follette said. Half a loaf dulls the appetite for reform. Don't compromise. Demand more than Barack Obama or even Keith Ellison could have imagined. Thank you very much.